Well, I have to admit, I'm Bob Wells. I'm the immediate past president of the Audubon Society, and I got this up on Facebook. I'm sure all of you guys saw it, the invite on Facebook, but I didn't get it up on the website, the invite up on the website. So I'm hoping we're going to have some more people joining kind of in midstream. But if you have friends that weren't able to attend that would like to, I am recording this and we're going to put it up onto the Audubon Society YouTube channel so they can watch that if we don't end up with some more people. But I thought this was a really an especially good topic to begin our fall series with. This is something that's very recent. It's just happened within the last couple of months. The app from Merlin just went up about a month ago within the Merlin app. And the Birdnet app is a separate app that also was developed by Cornell Ornithology. And it's only been up for about 2.5 months. So it's really pretty groundbreaking stuff. Is a lot of the, if you guys are familiar with the Merlin Bird ID app, it was kind of a breakthrough, and this kind of works seamlessly with the app that you already have. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Let's see here, so I can see here. Oops. So talk about Birdnet a little bit first. This is an app that was developed with Cornell, but it was developed in conjunction with a technology institute over in Germany. And this is a special technology institute that has a bunch of acoustic engineers and that kind of thing. And I was lucky enough to get in kind of on the ground floor with a webinar when they started talking about this. And it was developed a little bit before the Merlin app was developed, and it allows you to record birdsong with your smartphone, and then you click analyze, and this is sent all the way over to this technological institute in Germany without any internet connection, and then the analysis is sent back to you. So it works flawlessly, and they've done a whole lot of work on this to make it a minimalist kind of thing. It isn't huge. It won't eat up all your memory on your phone, but they do. I've been using it now for the whole time it's been out, and it's really quite nimble, and it's extremely accurate. So Cornell, they won't really admit to it, but I think they used a lot of these postdoctoral fellows at this technology institute to kind of get the platform up and running. But if you use Merlin, it runs exactly the same way that Merlin has run for now for about 7 years. And this is what happens when you record the birdsong. It's recorded in what's called a spectrogram, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. It's essentially a visual diagram of the birdsong. It's much more accurate than straight audio recording. You can measure every millimeter of the birdsong, and it is much more accurate in giving you things. And then when you press analyze, like I said, it goes over to this Chemnitz University of Technology in Germany. And then within just seconds, it flips back a bird ID. And it does something that the Merlin app doesn't do. It tells you how confident the app is on its identification. It will say certain, highly certain, and then it will go down to something that they don't think is entirely certain. So it gives you some idea as to how good the ID they feel has been. I'm going to primarily talk about Merlin, because Merlin, I think, is something that is pretty ubiquitous in bird ID. Now, this is just the slide is horrible. I'm sorry. If any of you know who Noah Stryker is, Noah Stryker is a very famous birder, and he set out on a entire big year back in 2000, actually in 15, 1 year after the original Merlin Bird ID app was introduced. This picture shows him, and Noah isn't a very tall person. He's actually a little bit short. But these are all of the field guides that Noah stuffed into a Apple portable computer, because he knew he was going to be virtually in every other country in the world, going around the globe. And that at that time was the only way that you could get really good field guide information. And obviously he couldn't haul this with him when he was going all over the world. So this essentially, what this slide is pointing to, is this is essentially what you're getting when you get a full featured Merlin app. You get this essentially in the palm of your hand with a really good okay, here, let me get back to where I need to go here. Okay. So the original bird Merlin, oh goodness, the original Merlin bird app, if any of you have been Merlin users since 2014, it essentially asks you 5 questions, and you don't realize that you're being asked 5 questions. You think you're being asked 3 questions, because what the Merlin app does is it takes your location, and that's the first question. And if you're in Omaha, then immediately it throws out all of the birds in its database that aren't being seen or can't be seen in Omaha. The second question is it takes the date automatically from your cell phone, and it provides seasonality. So some birds will be in the Omaha area, in September, but they won't be there in other months. And so they throw those birds out as well. And then it asks you, what size is the bird? Okay, which is here. And it gives you reference points. Sparrows, is it a sparrow? Is it between a sparrow and a robin? Is it a robin? Is it a crow? Is it between a crow and a robin? All the way up to a Canada goose. Okay, and you put the size in. Then it asks you what are up to 3 of the main colors of the bird. Okay, and you select the 3 most prominent colors to determine that. And then it asks you, in what habitat essentially did you see this bird? Was it at the feeder? Did you see it in the water? It was just on the ground eating? Was it in trees or bushes? Was it on a wire or a fence? And all of that calls down. And when you enter all that and you push identify, they come up with pictures of birds, and you can select that close to, and it will invariably, as it's been refined, it will come up with the bird that you saw. And you can select that and say, yes, that's my bird. Now, when Merlin first came out, it only had 100 supported birds. The first moment that it came off, onto your cell phone. So obviously, there in the U.S. and Canada, there's about 900 to 1,000 birds. So, but the thing about it is, and this app is free. They never charge you at all. So why is it free? Well, when you identify a bird and you let them do it, it puts it into a great big huge library. So they're gleaning data from you to make it even better and better, so they can add more birds. So the citizen science actually make the Merlin app across the board better. So And that was in 2014, and they grew it up to essentially all the birds in the world for being able to be identified from that. And they will sell you bird packs. If you're going to Indonesia, you can buy the bird pack for Indonesia. You don't have to have it on your phone all the time, gobbling up your memory. The next thing that they did was photo ID. So you can take a picture of a bird with your camera, you put it in the little square to where it's as big as it can be, and Merlin could do all the measurements, get all the colors, all that kind of thing, and it will give you a really, really good and accurate ID if you get a good enough picture. So I was just out birding, a couple of days ago out in Toll Park with a couple of friends who just drag big cameras around and shoot pictures. Now, what you can do is if you're birding and you don't want to be fumbling while they take a picture, it comes up in the viewfinder, the picture. I take a picture of the viewfinder and I put it into Merlin for picture ID, and that works perfectly. And it's even better than the 5 questions. So that was the next iteration in 2017 from just the beginning in 2014. And that, again, through citizen science for people using the app has grown completely and has made it more accurate every time somebody uses it. So in the end of June this year, the latest iteration on their ID page appeared, and it came out with a little bit of fanfare, but not much. I was just out, and if you're using Merlin, it will ask you do you want to upgrade to Sound ID? Okay, and it's on that same page where you choose whether you want to do the 5 questions, whether you've got a picture, and now you've got Sound ID in 2021, and barely a month and a half ago it came out. So I got into this initially with the Birdnet app. I volunteer out at Fontenelle, so I would go out there about 15 or 20 minutes early in front of my volunteer gig, and I would sit out at the picnic tables in the back, turn that on, and it would start identifying birds. And the first bird that I happened upon, I was sitting there, and there was one bird calling way in the distance. I could barely hear it. And it was one of the few semi-exotic birds, a yellow-billed cuckoo. It kind of makes a metallic kind of tapping sound for a call. And I recorded that, and it came back at me within 2 or 3 seconds and nailed a yellow-billed cuckoo ID. Now, why haven't these apps worked before? Why are we waiting? Because this is truly the first one that really has worked well. I mean, they've been notoriously bad across the board, the ones that come in, and we'll go to that here right now. So why is it better? In a word, these are spectrograms. Now, they look really complex and really goofy and scary and all that kind of stuff. But if any of you are musicians and you've learned to read music, a spectrogram is organized just like a piece of sheet music. The time is on the bottom, and it's measured in milliseconds across the board here. The pitch is the y-axis, so the higher the pitch up here, and you can't really see it here, but you get, in fact, let me show you the next slide. It kind of goes into it. So higher sounds, higher frequency sounds appear higher up on the spectrogram. Loud sounds appear as brighter colors, or you can get a black and white spectrogram that is just a bolder black. And that's all there is to it. If you have any background in music at all, it starts to make sense as to what it is. The difference between musical notation is that it's an ongoing line. It's not distinct notes of different things. So I'll show you a couple of really, really common birds that we kind of all know here in just a second. So the spectrograms here, like I said, are the x-axis is, you know, is the timing, and the frequency or the pitch of the sounds is on the y-axis. But the other thing that it does really, really well is it hears, a lot of times we don't realize it, but there are lots of different notes in a bird song. We hear it as one note, but it's actually harmony that we don't really realize that it's harmony. And there may be more than one, there may be 6 different notes being given off by this bird at the same time. They're different because, you know, they're continuous lines, and they just kind of roll across the screen, you know, with the time. But they're much more exact than sheet music or musical notation, because you can measure the timing that is pretty consistent across for that species song in milliseconds. And that's one thing that has made the spectrograms really, really accurate. And we'll talk a little bit about how they make it to these. Let's see here. Okay, now here's a black cap chickadee. And this is the slur sound that a lot of people will hear here. Now, I've got a recording here, and I'll play it. And you guys have all heard this if you're if you've done any birding really at all. It's 2 notes. And if you've been out in the backyard with it, you've heard that sound. Okay. Now, if you look at that, it doesn't look like much. This is a higher pitch, okay? So it's a little bit higher than this one. One thing that I find interesting is with this, there's a break in the middle of that second note. It sounds like one note to us, a lower note than the first tone. But they can measure all of these things, and what they're constructing is, instead of having a recorded bird song and then comparing that to some other recorded bird song, which is horribly inaccurate, they make this into nothing more than just a picture that they can make really, really accurate, and they can ID it just like they do a picture of the bird. So it's really pretty straightforward, and it's really consistent. Let's see, I got somebody coming in late here. Good. So it really takes a lot of the mistakes and the problems out of this. They also do a lot of other things here. The second one, you guys have all heard white-breasted nuthatches. This is a red-breasted nuthatch, and they're kind of notoriously, they sound a lot like white-breasted nuthatch, that kind of, grunting and snorting sound. Let's see, I've got here it is right here. So look at all those lines. Those are all individual notes that, like I was talking about, we don't hear those notes. So let me see if I can get this to you. So those sound like two individual notes, but they're actually made up of a lot of different pitches and things like that. So this makes this really, really characteristic. And they, again, they know exactly how long it takes for it to do it. They know exactly the pitches that the bird makes. And they ID it like they do a picture of the bird. So there's very little, that it is left to chance. So how do they get all the songs? Well, that's one of the reasons that all of the stuff when you download Merlin, Cornell doesn't charge you anything. The Macaulay Library, which has been around since 1929, contains 31 million audio recordings, pictures, all kinds of things. And just in the United States and Canada, there's 900 species represented. And that's roughly within probably 100 the total number of species in the US and Canada. It's been there since the beginning of the Merlin app. It was there, you know, answering those questions for you like that. And now they're taking all the song recordings. So when you record a bird song with this new bird song recording app, it will, if you let it, it isn't something that they grab, it will go into the Macaulay library. And so all of these acoustic engineers are putting into this Sound ID app up to 100 different bird songs of each species that they're dealing with. And they're measuring it directly. They're taking all kinds of different, it accounts for regional differences in bird song. One of the questions I asked at this webinar was, what do you do with mimics, catbirds, you know, blue jays that do a better red-tailed hawk call than red-tails do? Well, what they do is when they're dealing with a mimic, a lot of them, when somebody's looking at a blue jay or a catbird or something like that, and they're mimicking another bird, they mimic it and they can fool us, but they can't fool the spectrogram. So that recording of them mimicking another species of bird goes into the 100 songs. And I actually tried it because I was out in the forest and I heard a blue jay just give off a god-awful red-tailed hawk shriek, which they do really, really well. You know, 2 seconds out, comes back. They're not identifying as a red-tailed hawk. They say this is a blue jay. So they've got that down to a science. They can make it to fool us, but they can't fool the actual, you know, spectrograms that are being recorded. So they use what's called machine learning, and they use all of these recordings from the Macaulay library to train the Merlin app to hear each bird. So if you get 50 to 100 recordings, obviously not birds in every geographic location sound exactly alike, but if you give the app enough of these recordings, they will recognize that as a North Carolina blue jay as opposed to, you know, a Nebraska blue jay. There is some difference that can be had. So the other thing, and if you remember right, Cornell is not just Merlin. They were the people that brought you eBird, so you could send your bird lists in, and they use the information just like the other forms of identification. You think about it, you know, if they've got 1,000 birds that they're going through to try to figure it out, they do the same thing that they do with the 5 questions and the picture. Your phone takes the area that you're at and the season, and they throw out more than half of the birds that they would have to run through, because those birds don't exist in Nebraska, and they don't exist in that particular season in Nebraska. So they're going all the way back to eBird to help make the ID even better. Another real bugaboo with some of the previous birdsong ID things is they would take recordings and they might have 4 or 5 birds singing at the same time. And the machine learning, they would learn that if you're calling this, you know, a red-tailed hawk, or you're calling it a, you know, chickadee or something like that, yeah, you might have a chickadee recording in there, but you also might have 3 or 4 other birds, and the machine learns that, yeah, that's a chickadee. You know, some other bird singing is a chickadee. So with the spectrograms, they're able to isolate the exact beginning and the exact end of the bird song that is like the chickadee. It's not, you know, just one big jumble of a bunch of birds. and when you make that recording and there's 4 birds in there singing and it identifies the chickadee, if you click on the chickadee where it says this is a chickadee, it will highlight the exact, you know, half a second that was the chickadee call. So you can cut that out and you can send that on in, and they're doing that all the time when they're doing the machine learning training for this machine. You know, and one thing I heard that was really, really interesting were these German scientists talking about how you're going to use this other than us just running around and IDing the birds that we're wondering about. And one of the guys talked about how you can set up microphones and you can do a better job of learning when birds come into areas. So if they're hearing a certain bird call, and I say that, you know, my Baltimore Orioles always come in around the 1st of May, they can tell you that, yeah, it might be the 1st of May, but it also might be the, you know, the 10th of May, or they may not come into certain areas at all because they're listening with these microphones to see if the birds are in an area. And this is really good research support for conservation and for monitoring of bird species. You know, all this stuff has come out of Audubon, you know, that says that we've lost, you know, 3 billion birds in the last 50 years. This is the kind of stuff that it can really, really, really help and a good practical use for it. Another real bugaboo with the old, in fact, all bird ID things is, and you know, everybody thinks at Fontenelle Forest, you're going out to the woods and it's going to be quiet and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there in front of Fontenelle Forest in about, 5 or 6 blocks, half a mile, something like that, away, probably a mile, is Highway 75. And even at 7 a.m., you're listening to this kind of dull drone of the traffic in front, you know, all kinds of car noises, planes, weather, all manner of ambient noises. And they're not only machine training with the bird song, but they're putting all these ambient noises in and say, listen, that's a bunch of cars rolling by in the background. Don't even listen to that. So they get, you know, when they're doing the ID, they throw all the extraneous noise. And so all they're listening to is that bird song that they've culled down and got it down to that. And it will discard all the noise that's not the exact birdsong spectrograms. And with the incredible numbers of different calls, they can, like I said, they can put in different geographic calls. And I mentioned the business with the mimics, that a lot of times you know, like I say, blue jays, crows, catbirds, those guys, they can fool us. I mean, they do periodically with me, but they can't fool the actual spectrograms that are stored with these things. So it's really, and I have been using it now for about a month, and I've been shocked. The Merlin app is a little bit different than, oops. Oh, here we go. You know, and this is the full extent of Cornell here, and they're using collaboratively the acoustic engineers in Germany to refine this. But every time you allow them to scarf one of your recordings from a blue jay in Nebraska or you know, whatever, and they can use that, right now we're at the stage that I talked about with the 5 question ID. They supported 100 birds, for God's sakes. So if any of you are early adopters like I was back in 2014, you cursed Merlin because it couldn't ID anything. But all you have to do is just be patient, support it with eBird reports, that kind of thing. And it gets better and it gets better. And now Merlin is it. It is the gold standard for all kinds of ID. And right now, initially when they popped the Merlin Sound ID out, they supported 150 birds. And I said, oh God, here we go again. We're going to have, this slow rollout, and you're not going to be able to ID anything, and people are going to get frustrated. Well, about 2 weeks after I started using it, I again was out at Toll Park. I popped this thing on, and there was a note saying update bird song ID. So I punched it, and it was another 300 species that these guys had cranked out in 2 weeks with 100, bird songs for specific species, all this kind of stuff. So they're working as quickly as they can, and it will only get better. So, and as many of you know, and some of you might not know, the best thing about anything that comes from Cornell, eBird, the Birdnet, Merlin, there's no charge, and there's no, you got to pay this to do this within the app, all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely free. What they're getting out of it is they're getting citizen science. So they're getting lots of submissions and that kind of thing. And it just makes it better and better and better. So I've been shocked because I've cursed many bird ID apps. Oops. And if you've gotten to where you've been using the other Merlin apps, techniques, that kind of thing, it's the same intuitive kind of thing. You open it up, the app, and it's on the same page that all of the different other ID, ID by questions, ID by pictures, and then it says ID by sound. And you push that button, and it goes to a page that you click, and it starts recording. So it's really intuitive, it's really easy to use, and it is just incredibly accurately. It's incredible. So like I said down here, I kind of mentioned, I got on top of myself here, they've added 300 new birds in the last 10 days. So there's some little folks over there, either in Germany or up in Ithaca and Cornell, who are doing the machine training to get these birds on your app. The other thing that I found really interesting is this is not connected to the cloud. As a birder, you should recognize that connecting to the cloud is not something that you can do, because a lot of times you bird in places that you can't do that with. And so they're doing all kinds of research as to how to make this as light. It operates without any connection to the internet whatsoever. Don't ask me how they do it. I'm sure that's extremely proprietary. But all I know is that it works, and you can send something over to Germany with Birdnet, and it comes back in 5 seconds from Germany with an answer off of their servers. It doesn't seem like it should be possible, but trust me, it is very possible. That's what I have. Now, I would love, if you guys have any questions, I will try my very best to answer them. So go up into the chat box if you got any questions about it. I know I covered it pretty quickly, and we're actually right at about an hour and a half here. So, or about an hour, not even an hour, 40 minutes, I guess is what I'm trying to read off of here. So if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. And you can unmute if you want, if you just want to ask, that would be fine at this point.
Bob, I have a question. I've been using it for a couple weeks.
Oh, great.
And I've noticed this morning, it came up with 3 different woodpeckers. the red-bellied woodpecker, a downy woodpecker, and a pileated woodpecker. But behind the pileated, it had a red circle that half of it was whited out. Do you know what that means?
Is this,
It's
it's Merlin and it's not Birdnet? I
it's
think that,
Merlin.
yeah, I think that's their, if you use Birdnet, it's essentially the same type of thing. And they, instead of that, they put something that says highly certain. It's like my silly yellow-billed cuckoo ID. I
Oh,
knew what that was. And so what they're telling you is that's a 50-50. That's a toss. And the reason it is because you don't have pileated woodpeckers up where you live up there, do you?
we might. I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
seen any, but I know they had them in Fontenelle, and then I've seen some others in other parts
mhm.
of this region. So,
Yeah, and they're kind of creeping in all along the Missouri River basin, down to up to Neil Woods. There's at least 3 pair up there. There's good grief, about 4 pair down at Indian Cave, and that's been over about the last, I want to say, like 35 years. I mean, 35 years ago they didn't have any pileateds at Fontenelle. And I would bet you there's probably 5 pairs that I know down there. So yeah, their range is in flux. I think that's fair to say.
okay, because I'm less than half a mile from Neil Woods.
Oh,
So
yeah, you get
I'm,
paid.
yeah, okay.
Wait, was it were you recording drumming, or was it calls that you were recording?
There was both, but I don't think when I heard just the drumming and no calls, nothing came up.
Really?
So I don't think that they identify by drumming unless
Yeah, there's the possibility of that, because I know that they've got different drumming, and they've got drumming, or they've all got different calls, obviously. And I know they've got recordings of each one of the calls, in the Macaulay Library. So
okay.
anybody else? I'd love to hear from you guys.
This is Catherine. I posted something, but I wear hearing aids. And when I have my hearing aid, and my hearing aids are connected to my phone for various reasons. When I have my hearing aids on, I can see that Merlin Sound is recording the bird singing, but then it cannot or does not report to me what bird it is hearing. And I have tested that multiple ways, so I know that's what's happening. So if I go birding, if I'm going to use Merlin Sound, I have to turn off my hearing aids, which is a real disadvantage.
Sure. One thing I think that might be going on is, how are you connected? How are your hearing aids connected to it? Because they,
Bluetooth.
because I wonder, what I'm wondering out loud here is it in any way connected with the microphone on your phone?
No, it's connected through Bluetooth.
Bluetooth. Oh, well, that's okay. I can't make that excuse then. I don't know. One thing you might do is you might go to Cornell or Merlin even, and report that and ask them what they think is going on.
Okay.
Because I can tell you, these guys are really intense, and they get lots of feedback. I mean, I was just shocked during that webinar. I mean, I asked them 5 questions that I thought I was doing to stump the band with, and they just looked at me like, oh boy, you're not getting anywhere with that one, that kind of thing. So they got it down, and I just was really in awe of these German postdocs. I mean, they're smart, for God's sakes, just say it.
Well, these are Danish hearing aids, so.
Okay, well, they're conflicting, but I would actually go, because they are really, really asking for lots of feedback. They want this thing to work perfectly.
Okay, because it really puts me at a disadvantage to not be able to hear while I'm birding unless.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody thinks I'm a big time birder, and I only got back into birding about 6 or 7 years ago after a career. And it's the old joke of, it's all that good hearing is just wasted on the young. I didn't know anything about bird song or how to hear it or anything, but now I'm learning a bunch of stuff about bird song, and then I can't hear it. Neil Retzloff, who a lot of you guys might know, his wife Deb always says, no, you can't hear that. Don't tell me that that's out there, because you can't hear it. You're too old. So, yeah, and I'm kind of getting in that boat, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
yeah, anybody else? You guys can drop, unmute yourself and just ask questions. There's not enough of us to where we're gonna. There we go. Another thing, and I think I might have mentioned it in the beginning. If, I muffed this by not getting it on the calendar or the website. If you have any friends and I'll apologize for that, but if you have any friends that want to see this and kind of hear about it, it will be on the YouTube page. We'll get it up here. It's recording right now. I should have told you that in the beginning, so they won't identify your dog or something there. So, but yeah, it's going to be recorded, so somebody can go back and listen to it afterwards. Anybody else? Well, I would, if you, are you guys all Merlin users, or are you new birders? I'm curious. Does everybody use? Catherine, you're a Merlin user, obviously, right?
Absolutely, and I'm new at this. I've only been doing it maybe a year and a half, and I would not have nearly the birds I have if it weren't for Merlin.
I know, and if you got somebody that you can go with that takes pictures, good pictures.
Yes, I do. Plus, I've learned to take my own pictures.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, by all means. But that, and like I said, you get this thing going on where, let me see, I'm looking here. Okay, you got the hearing aids. Holly said fairly, okay, you guys do. So everybody basically is a Merlin user, and it's really intuitive. This song ID app is no harder to use than any of the, in fact, actually it's easier, because you just push the button and then push the button to stop. And it, if you sit there at the picnic tables like I did out at Fontenelle, you turn it on, it will just keep ticking the birds that it hears. I got 12 birds in 30 seconds. One morning when I was out there, it just kept reeling them off. So it's plenty good, and it was right. I mean, I knew enough about what I was hearing to know that was it. So, okay. But yeah, and I mentioned to you, I think in the beginning, that I was out there with a real good friend who admitted to me that she wasn't a very good birder, but she was a really, really good photographer. And this time of year, you get these birds, these fall migrant warblers that come back through here, and it's just incredibly intense, because you see the leaves moving, but you can't get your binocs on them quick enough. And what this woman was doing was she was looking for the leaves moving, and then she was clicking off about 30 pictures. And we were getting all, and then she showed me the best bird picture she had. I took a picture of it with my cell phone, my iPhone, and then put it up into Merlin, and it was nailing every ID. So if you guys have access to photography, that's a good way to go. Oh, and Linda, you say you just, okay. So you nailed it, a great crested flycatcher right away, huh?
First try.
Oh man, isn't that gratifying? I don't know a lot of bird song, but I tell you, when it, and that yellow-billed cuckoo was really, really light. It was barely hearing it. And I just went, boy, this is something we got to talk about here. So if you're a Merlin user, use the Merlin app. It's intuitive. It fits right into the way that you're IDing birds. You might try the Birdnet. The Birdnet is free, exactly free as well. So it's a little bit different. Like I said, you click record, and then you stop it, and it has a button immediately to say analyze, and that is going to that silly server in Germany, and then back at you in under 10 seconds. So don't ask me how they're doing that. I don't think I can think how they're doing it, but it's
Bob, oops.
impressive.
Bob, one thing that you didn't mention that I think is pretty neat is that it creates a library of all the recordings that you've made. So then you can just go back and say, well, didn't I hear that the other day? And you can
And
check your recordings.
the other thing that it does is you may get, like I did with the 12 birds, and if you click on that entry, it will go right to the segment in the spectrogram where that bird song was. You don't have to go searching and searching and searching through that, which is a real, like I said, one of the big bugaboos of the old birdsong IDs was they were just throwing these recordings out of Macaulay at them, and they might have 3 bird songs in them. And so they were, they were learning that any of those three bird songs was a red-breasted nuthatch. And no, they aren't. And that's why you were getting some of that. Where in the world did it come up with that? So yeah, that's been a real advance. And the ambient noise thing is really, really cool. I mean, you can sit there, because that used to be the big bugaboo, was that it couldn't hear over the drone of the traffic, or that kind of thing, and it was just worthless. I mean, it wouldn't even guess. It would just tilt on you. So that's really a big advance. I mean, these are people that understand what we're cursing about when we're out birding, that you can't hear things or something like that. So yeah, I would really give this a good run, because it's only going to get better. Like I said, they're up to 457, I think, supported birds, and that's for Canada and the US. And I think the number is about 900 to 1,000 species. So I would imagine by the end of the year, they're going to have all 900 of them up on that. So it's going to be a good deal. So I don't want to keep you guys anymore. If you don't have any more questions, we can end this. But yeah, tell your friends that it was Bob's fault that he didn't get that up on the web page, on the Audubon web page. But if they want to watch this, they want to learn a little bit about it, by all means, just go to the ASO's YouTube page, and it'll be up probably tomorrow or the next day. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. And we will, we're working on somebody canceled on me for next month, and I'm working on somebody else that I think I can probably get, but I'm not going to declare it, because they may quit on me as well. So, but we'll have something for next month, second Thursday. And as near as I can tell, they're going to be Zoom meetings until proven otherwise. So very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.